Second, hey, we're live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty. And change of pace today, we're talking to Grant Howitt, who is well known for making what we call one-page RPGs. How you doing, Grant?
I'm good. I'm warm. We're veering perilously close towards summer, and so I'm having. I think my first time of the year. I'm having the podcast sauna, which is when you close all of the doors and windows into your tiny box office. Sorry, not your box office like a cinema. Like my office is the size and shape of a box, and you just sort of start stewing in your own filth like a crock pot.
Yeah, you guys don't really do central air so much there in England, do you?
No, we don't. No, I'm very excited to say that we have an air conditioner unit. We bought it for summer, and we've not turned it on yet. But it's this massive box thing.
Yeah, I am sitting directly under an AC vent, which is why I'm wearing my Dublin hoodie, because it's going to be 90 degrees this week in Denver. So it's well on the way to being summer here. Well, hey, just to give. As I was saying before the podcast, most of my listeners, I kid myself that I have an audience, but most of my audience are more familiar with traditional RPGs. Used to focus largely in the superhero genre. We kind of expanded it. We do a lot of coverage of Starfinder these days, and occasionally we have some guys on from the OSR movement to talk about their stuff. But you're best known for being a guy who writes mini RPGs or one-page RPGs. Can you tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind that movement?
So I started a Patreon about 6 years ago now, and I decided that I would mail out games that I made on there, and to my backers I would send them physical copies of the games, and things very quickly got out of hand to the point when, because I was living in Australia at the time, and it was costing me more to print and send the books than I was getting from the Patreon. So I just stopped using it for 3 years rather than actually fix my problems. And thankfully, about 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, we had the idea of what if every single game was just 1 page long, and we'd still charge the same for delivering them and stuff, but and people were more than welcome to say, oh, actually, I don't want to pay $15 for a single page of paper. That's ridiculous. Welcome to back out. But it's been tremendous because it's meant that I have a place to get out all those weird small ideas for daft games. I can go and put them somewhere, and then they don't get in the way of my bigger games that we sort of like build the business on, and we have to try and we can make product lines supporting them. But the philosophy has been somewhere between. It's almost like I've dared myself, I think, somewhere between a dare and a challenge, to see if I can keep doing it every month. And seeing as I get $2,250 every time I put one out, it's not just a dare; it's become a job.
Well, I mean, you're doing this monthly. That's a nice income stream for RPGs, especially mini RPGs.
It's a lot of games, yeah. It's like it's been tremendous to see the levels of support which people will give me for what is a free product. You know, what is free. I think people want to see more of this sort of thing in the world, and they cherish the art that me and other creators like me are making. In terms of there's an awful lot of a lot of people I think are quite intimidated by traditional RPGs, just in terms of the cost or the difficulty of the rule sets. Especially if they're trying to get over social stigma about trying to get their friends to play them. So I think having short games, which are often quite silly, is really there's definitely a gap in the market for it, which we are now filling. The one page industry is blossoming deliciously. And has been so. That I'd say on itch.io especially, there's a huge movement there to do games which are like a quarter of a page, a sixth of a page, which is out of my remit. I think.
You get into the lyric games. I'm not even sure what that means, but yeah, quite short and maybe not necessarily meant to be played. But
yeah,
we don't need to go ahead.
It's an interesting thing. I had a Twitter thread a while ago, and I was like, I don't like lyric games for these reasons, and it turns out that people got really upset about me saying I didn't like lyric games for these reasons, and I think that I was taking kind of a reductionist view on it. I was saying, oh well, these games are meant to be played there, and people thought I meant that. that I meant that they weren't games. I think they are obviously valid games, but I think there's definitely, like, what I do isn't necessarily lyric games. Like, sometimes I write jokes about games in the form of games, and those are lyric games if they're not playable, and that's a really weird space to be in.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, this might be your best known game, would you say? Or at least this got certainly a high profile there a couple of years ago. Honey Heist?
Yes, Honey Heist. So Honey Heist is it was the first thing I produced which really took off. It's a game in which you play a criminal bear, and you have two stats, bear and criminal. And you have a complex plan which requires precise timing, but unfortunately you're a goddamn bear. And it's an instant sell. It works really well. Like even people who are like, oh, I'm really more into serious RPGs, are like, oh yeah, I'll be a criminal bear. I understand it. There's nothing high concept to understand aside from maybe the fact that you can disguise yourself as a human even though you're a bear if you've got a hat on. That's the only thing which we need to explain.
Well, and it's an easy conceit to sell. I mean, it's sort of like Clark Kent can put on his glasses and no one thinks he's Superman anymore.
Precisely. Yeah. In fact, it gives me an idea for a hack. But it was picked up by Marisha Ray of Critical Role. She got in touch with me 3 years ago now. I don't know. I honestly don't know how long ago it was. She got in touch and was like, "Hi, I'm interested in running this. Do you have any advice for a first-time GM? I'm interested in running this on stream." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Oh, I'm just going to look up what this lady's streaming. Oh my god!" Because I didn't quite realize what Critical Role was. But she's been so good about promoting the game alongside it, like especially with indie, like with bigger RPGs like D&D and Pathfinder stuff. It doesn't hugely matter if you don't promote the game because they've got a promotional budget themselves. Whereas indies like me, we really rely on word of mouth. And so to have a high-profile streamer say, "Hi, this is Grant's game. Here's where you can buy it. Here's where you can back his Patreon. I'm going to wear the T-shirt," is just such an enormous boon to get a little benediction from the high priests of gaming in that respect.
Yeah, that's you kind of living the dream of many indie developers in that respect. To have, it's as you say, benediction. It's recognition.
Yeah, there's a joke going around that Honey Heist is the world's only indie role playing game because that's all that people on podcasts play apparently. But I think the reason why it does so well is because it's big and silly and daft. It's immediately easy to grab, and a lot of one-page games that prior a lot of indie games as well have quite serious themes. And while that's certainly a valid use for a game, and I write games with serious themes as well, I don't expect basically wacky comedy troupes to play them on air. Mm-hmm. I think that's why it's worked.
I think, as you said earlier, it's a really easy sell. You try and talk your group into a new game, and usually it's kind of a fight. But hey, your bears pulling a heist. It's hard to say no to that. It's a good time.
And they follow a sort of goblin logic as well, by which I mean, like, goblins tend to have slightly different rules of physics from everyone else in the world. It's like they've got a little bit of cartoon logic to them. Mm-hmm. And I think like that it brings with it this sort of ridiculous over the topness, the fact that you're a bear in a hat who can talk but only to other bears and maybe a little bit to humans. It puts you in this ridiculous yes and mindset. And the fact that you can't really get hurt, the fact that like there's no wrong decision to make in Honey Heist, it means that you get this freewheeling nonsense which comes out really nicely.
Now, you did a Goblin-specific game a few years ago, right? Goblin Quest?
I did, yeah. The first game I ever wrote, actually, the first game which we published was Goblin Quest, which is closer to Paranoia, I think. It's I'm about to say it's like a comedy Paranoia, and Paranoia is comedy, but the mechanics themselves, especially around especially XP previous, aren't necessarily wired to comedy. They're more wired to a sort of weird sadomasochistic relationship between the GM and the players, which, like, if that's your kink, fine, but say it out loud. And Goblin Quest is it's kind of a slapstick violence comedy game in that when you pick up your dice and you roll the dice, you've got as even a chance of getting injured as you have of succeeding, and the more dice you roll, the more likely you are to succeed and die. And so and you get 5 goblins each because it's very much like Paranoia, and it's all this sort of like this shared consciousness, not shared consciousness, consensual reality. So the goblins are sort of make up as they go along, and you're kind of just playing toddlers, except you're setting things on fire, which I think people really like.
sorry, I needed a second on that one. But yes, Pirate Maniac toddlers are hilarious in the right
Yeah.
context. So,
What's not to like?
what indeed. Well, cool. So let's talk about the project we came on to had John to promote is you release compendiums every year or so.
I do, yes.
And
Unfortunately, go on.
Oh no, I was going to say if people go to rowanrookanddecker.com, this is up right now, 1 year of one-page RPG bundles, and this is a collection of the last year's worth from your Patreon, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Well, so it's 13. 13 games rather than a year. And the reason why we did that is because the first year we put it out, I wrote a game called Trashkin, which I was really happy with, and I wanted to put it in the compendium and not wait a year. So there were 13 games. And now I have to keep doing 13 games rather than saying like 1 year, rather than having it as one official year. So yeah, it's a year and a month. It's 13 games. And this is the most recent bundle. The thing with the physical bundles we do, so all the RPGs which I release, the one pages, are free to download. So I put them up on Twitter so people can share them around. But also, you go to a website, you can get a high quality PDF for pay what you want, because I've already gotten paid for it on Patreon. I don't need to charge for it again. But the point of buying it is that you get the back pages as well. So the back pages have like the deal is we never release them online. They're only ever in physical format. So if you find a back page, someone scanned it and illegally uploaded it, or they broke into my computer.
So now the back pages, give us an example of what that content would be.
Oh, sure. So there's a game called Dungeon Scroll, and Dungeon Scroll is it's a very light D20 system inspired by a game called Bastionland and a game called Hypertellurians. They're both sort of like scrappy D20 games. And with that, it's got quite a simple generation system for building the dungeon. Like the group builds the dungeon as they go. And so like you roll a little table and draw the thing, and you go through and have the rooms. It's sort of like Feywild nonsense. It's kind of fun. And on the back page, there's a game called Tiger Woods' Tiger Woods, which has nothing to do with Dungeon Scroll whatsoever. And your transport crashes in Tiger Woods' Tiger Woods, which is Tiger Woods' tiger and forest themed theme park. He's standing on top of the 19th hole, like fully nude, hooning golf balls at you one-handed with a driver, and you have to like battle tigers and get through the world's largest sand trap. You're all teens and you're in love, and yeah. So like stuff that's too silly to put out as a front page, I'll put on the back page. But also things like I'll put extra setting stuff or extra mechanics. Like sometimes I'll put equipment on the back there, or I'll put a hack of the game. So for example, what I did in my summer holidays is kind of it's sold as slapstick low consequence adventures in the vein of British comics. And you play magical kids basically, trying to have fun on your summer holidays. And on the back page, it's what I did on my final adventuring exam. And you play students of students at St. Evocacious School for Adventurous Girls, and your final exam is an adventure, so you have to go out and do an adventure, but you're not really properly armed, and you're like a trainee cleric or a trainee barbarian.
I have to say, I really enjoy some of the celebrity humor you have. Like Sean Bean stars in A Very Northern Christmas. And the back page is Force Patrollers, which uses the same rules to simulate an underfunded Super Sentai show.
I really like Sean Bean. I think the fact that he dies a lot is very funny.
Did you see him in Frankenstein Chronicles?
No, I glossed over that. It was I think it was ITV who made it, and I stand firm in the belief that ITV can't make telly. But that is my own prejudices coming through. I'm sure it was great.
It really wasn't.
Okay,
it certainly had its moments. It was kind of nice that they inverted the whole Sean Bean dies at the end by having Sean Bean die at the beginning.
Oh, great. Did they then bring him back to life as a Frankenstein?
Yes, exactly. And then there's more Frankensteins he meets and has adventures with. But the first couple episodes were kind of slow paced. Anyway, we're talking about your games. I'm sorry. Anyway,
that's right. I mean that sounds like a better game than the one I wrote with him, where you have to try and film a Netflix special without dying. but you play 5 Sean Beans each. It's very high concept. There's a recording of it. I ran it on the Rusty for Rusty Quill, who do actual play podcasts. They do a Christmas live stream, and I went along and ran it the day after it was released. Nice. And I was like, so this is kind of a playtest. And it really captured for 2 straight hours just the complete lack of anyone grasping what the fuck was going on.
Nice.
It's great. So, tune in if you like seeing confused people doing bad Northern accents.
All right, I actually might check that out. Oops, I didn't know you did actual plays. I might be tedious and ask you for one later if you're willing to do that kind of thing, because this looks like these games look to be like they'd be a lot of fun.
I do on occasion, yeah. Okay. Generally, so the Rusty Quill thing is for it's for charity. So we do that for Mind, and like especially like live streams and stuff. I'll generally just do this for charity. Go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that people can get that right now on your website, which is, as we said earlier, Rowan Wickendeckard. We will have the link in the show notes.
Also, it's just if you go to rrdgames.com,
so much easier.
Yeah, so much. You don't need to misspell Deckard or put in 2 Ds around the and Deckard, as I did.
Is it impolite if I ask where that name came from?
No, it's absolutely fine. Chris, so it's the 3 of us, my writing partner Chris, and my actual partner Mary. We founded the business together 3 years ago, and we were trying to come up with a decent name for Chris and I to write games. We couldn't work anything out. We couldn't work out what it was, and we had I think it was like backroom games and various sort of like things which weren't taking it seriously. And then two friends of mine, Sophie Sampson and Holly Gramazio, they run a live games business, and their business is called Matheson Marceau. And I thought, that's great, because that's neither of their names, but it sounds really fancy.
It sounds like a high-end law firm, yeah.
So we went for. So initially we were Rook and Deckard, which is like just character names that Chris and I have used. And when Mary came on board, we became Rowan, Rook and Deckard. As we sort of jammed them together, and it does sound a bit like a higher. It sounds a bit like a law firm. It's like it sounds a bit more respectable than Grant and Chris's dice games about elves.
You have a point there, sir. I cannot argue that. Speaking of dice games about elves, let's talk about Heart.
My chair's making a lot of noise. Heart is the new hotness, basically. So we wrote Spire 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, which is Spire is a game. It's urban fantasy in which you play a dark elf, a cell of dark elf freedom fighters trying to overthrow a high elf government. And it's very anti-authoritarian. It's lots of fun, and the standard progression is that you get found by the secret police and die, but not after causing part of or all of a revolution, which is fun. You know, it's quite cathartic, especially
very
at the moment.
Blake 7, but with elves.
You know, I've never seen Blake 7. I'm very sorry. I don't know. I've barely seen Doctor Who. I hear Blake 7 slightly more serious.
I haven't seen it either. I've got a friend who's on the podcast quite a bit who's a huge Blake Sevens fan. And
what a pair of fake geek boys we are, huh?
I know, it's awful. I have seen Doctor Who, but only because my wife's a huge fan. But anyway, we're talking about Heart. Let's talk about Heart.
So Heart is kind of the follow-up to that in a way. It's not about revolution. It takes place in this sort of this meat portal underneath the city of Spire.
Just so I'm clear, did you say meat portal?
Meat, yeah, like a meat portal. It goes into another dimension, and it's kind of like the other dimension is like teeth. It's gross, which is great, and it's infinite, which is the other useful thing as far as setting books go, because we can just keep jamming stuff in there, and no one's like, oh, hang on a sec, it's too big. You didn't say this was here. No, it turned up. But we wrote it with an eye to. It's kind of a fantasy heartbreaker. If that's, I don't know. Is it the sort of podcast where you throw around that kind of terminology?
That's a pretty common term in games.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, please feel free.
Yeah, so it's a fantasy heartbreaker in as much as we love the idea of dungeon crawling. We love the thought of we're going to go down into this strange place, this frontier, this lawless place, and we're going to see what happens to us while we're there and what we get out of it. But the actual practice of running dungeon crawls and playing dungeon crawls, there's a lot of admin, there's a lot of tracking resources, there's a lot of, oh, actually, we're just going to go back to the village for a while and then come back here the day after. Oh, actually, we're going to sleep in this room for a while. And there's a lot of bookkeeping. And we tend to, like, when we write games, we try to skip to the exciting bit. So all of our like resources rules, all of our rules about how much food you have and how long you can survive, it really focuses on the bit where you run out. We don't really care about the bit before that. So everything's geared around this mechanic called stress and fallout, and things get worse for you, and then something bad happens. And depending on what kind of stress you've taken, the flavor of bad thing is determined. So it's the same as so we use the same mechanics for I've been shot in the chest to I had to pawn something so I could buy a lantern to I've been discovered by someone who's looking for me, that sort of thing. We use the same rules, so everything sort of flows together. And we're really proud of it. We've taken the ideas like behind dungeon crawling, we've taken the ideas behind Dungeons and Dragons and tried to examine them and look at like why the hell would you go into a dungeon? Why would you be an adventurer if you were a normal person? And what sort of obsessive weirdos do you get who go into dungeons? And so, like, in addition to having a class, and all of our classes are weird because we wrote them, you also have a calling, and this is the reason why you keep going deeper into the heart to try and find something, and that you're trying to find knowledge or absolution, or you're trying to find a connection to the world around you, or you're being forced down there. And from that, we have we hopefully managed to weave together this weird travel narratives. Everyone's got their own beats that they're pushing on story-wise, but you have this overarching thing as you push deeper into the heart. And yeah, that went on sale. The PDF went on sale about 6 weeks ago, I think. About 6 weeks ago, and we've been hearing great things about it. Everyone's having a lovely time with it. It's really great hearing player reports, and I would encourage you to go check it out, fair listener. And if you are interested in understanding a bit more about it, you can get a quick start for absolutely nothing off our website.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Yeah, I was reading some of your description here. I like the predatory pub. Is that a pub that's actually a mimic, or how's that work?
It's more, kind of. It's more like a pitcher plant.
A what?
And so a pitcher plant is like they're these sort of large jug-shaped plants full of this sort of digestive stomach acid, basically, and they smell great. To flies, and a fly comes up and is like, gonna have a little sniff around at this plant, maybe there's some meat in here. It falls in, drowns, gets dissolved. Delicious. Love carnivorous plants. I think they're really cool. And so the pub, the Lost Orders, the pub works in the same way, in that it grows organically out of sight, and then it's got like a bartender who is just part of the plant, and everything exists as exactly like you would expect a pub to be, except it's like a mile underground. And how are they getting the crisps in? And then you go for a piss, the stairs collapse, your leg breaks in the basement, and you drown.
That is genius. I love that. That is a really cool idea. All right.
One of the things we want to do was look at monsters and look at the way which they've become hackneyed, which they've become we all know what to expect with mimics. We all know what to expect with, say, minotaurs or skeletons or zombies or that sort of thing, and think about them a bit more and iterate. And so, yeah, the idea of a mimic is like, not only is it a full pub with jutsu, but actually you might get on with it. You might be quite interesting, and it isn't malign, it isn't evil. It's just like a plant. Yeah.
Just trying to. Can you, if you survive the experience, can you talk to the pub? Can you,
mate? There's a class which lets you adopt them.
Oh.
If you play a witch, you can when you take the lair upgrade, you adopt a predatory building, and it follows you around, appearing in settlements where you visit.
I have to buy this game. That is a glorious idea. I really like it. All right. So for our legions of listeners and viewers out there, this is Heart. It's the latest release. And you don't have to go to rowanrookendecker.com, because that is a mouthful. It's RRD Games. We'll get you there as well. And you can pick it up for the princely sum of $20. And I'm guessing that's a PDF.
Yes, this PDF. If you we're getting it printed at present, we had a Kickstarter at the end of last year, and thankfully, despite the god awful pox which is ravaging this globe, we're doing okay. We're still on schedule. So if you pick up the PDF, we'll give you a discount on the physical equal to the cost of the PDF, basically.
So soldiering on in spite of the plague. Good news, good news.
Absolutely.
All right. So, and if folks are interested in hearing more about the fun one-page RPGs, you are very easy to find on either Patreon or itch.io.
Twitter's the best bet, actually, I'd recommend.
Twitter? Really? Okay.
Yeah, well, sorry. I am easy to find on Patreon and itch.io, but Twitter is where I would recommend people follow my Twitter because I post about everything on there. I guess it's not the most reliable thing, not the most reliable way to do it, but I post every one-page game up on there as a tweet, and also details like if there's like new articles we've written or new games we're putting up, or like little tidbits from games I'm working on at present. That's where to go.
All right. And you're just GS Howitt, 2 T's on Twitter, so very easy to find there as well. So, all right, excellent. So do you ever, when you're not designing games, what would you like to play if you're not playing your own games?
I really like, so I played Aegon on the weekend.
Okay.
Which is a fascinating system. So that's John Harper's, I think John Harper and Sean Nittner put it out, and that's got a really cool way of. I've not really played anything quite like it before. It reminds me a little bit of Dogs in the Vineyard, and you have the GM rolls the difficulty at the start of a challenge, and then they say, right, who wants to try and beat that difficulty? And so you get to see what you're trying to beat, and like you build a dice pool out of these different things you're putting together. It's a story about mythic figures, about mythic Greek figures, and so from that it's like you never roll unless it's really important and exciting. So it's not like I'm going to roll to see if I see the guy. No, you see the guy. No, you find the thing. Whatever. And like you're skipping to the exciting bit of the game, and it's these big clashes. I think like we had, the game was about 4 rolls. Like 4 or 5 opposed checks, but it's really ritualized. It's really tight. It requires you to know a lot about Greek mythology to get the most out of it, which I do not. But it was I was really impressed with that. I would recommend people take a look at it. I was really It's really interesting to see how John Harper's styles developed over the years, like coming out of Lady Blackbird and into Blades in the Dark, and I really like where he's going with Aegon.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Sometimes I can forget that Evil Hat does stuff besides Fate. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I haven't seen much from Fate in a while. Actually, I used to be really into it. I used to be really into it, and I played it a few times. And that's not a slam against Fate. That's a slam against me. In as much as I got it, and was like, oh no, I get it now. Oh, I understand. And it's like it's this really cracking system for running anything, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that edge. It doesn't have that purpose. It wasn't written for a purpose, and so I think almost like I'd seen it and like, okay, I can see what the system can do. I don't feel this anymore. I don't feel like I'm trying to scratch their niche with this.
Well, it's kind of like when talk about making the sale, convincing yourself or a group to try a new game. And as we said, Honey Heist, it's got a great one-line sales pitch. Fate, it's kind of like, it's not like GURPS at all mechanically, but in terms of a system, it's a universal system. You can do anything, and if you can do anything, you're like, oh, okay, what do I want to do with it?
Second game we put out was called Unbound. So Unbound is a universal or like generic role-playing game in that it seeks to emulate a genre. It simulates an action genre, and it almost like we learned a lot from MMOs. We were playing a lot of Secret World at the time, like the idea of positioning and pulling ag and doing various things along those lines we wrote into the game, but we tried to have it cinematic and tactical and various other things. But you can't sell a generic game. The Kickstarter was a nightmare trying to get people to buy the thing, because as you said, people ask what can you do, and you're like, oh, anything. Well, I don't care about anything. I want to play this game where I've seen a picture of the wizard I'm going to be.
You need a specific compelling hook to get
you
in.
Yeah.
And
it's really one of the things which has fascinated me is especially when I was sort of coming up. It's not such a problem now, but when I was coming up as a designer, giving people a free product, they don't really give a shit. If you say to them, hey, can you give me some money for this product that doesn't exist yet? They get really excited because it could be anything.
Yeah. It's
you tell them the idea, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to support this," rather than you can have this, and no one cares.
There's a whole lot of psychology to be plumbed there about perceived value, and I'm not really the guy to do it. But I have noticed that if I give a product away for free, no one cares. If you say it's temporarily on sale, all of a sudden, oh, okay. Hey,
I've got to have this.
Hey, we just got a question from Reddit, believe it or not. A nice fella. Oh, sir, I cannot pronounce your username, but it's spelled WIRR. Beltier says, brilliant. Maybe too obvious, but I'm curious about Grant's take on this. My question is about Patreon as a funding source. I have the impression that only lucky and incredibly talented and hardworking few can actually make a living out of it, and the large, equally hardworking majority can be lucky if they break even on the production cost. How sustainable is crowdfunding as an income stream for a small indie publisher? And what is the right perspective for someone looking to start a crowdfunded project?
He got it right. Well, they got it right with lucky, given that I am lucky with this, and I put the work in. But I was lucky enough to be I was lucky enough to have the capacity to devote my life full time to games, which is a tremendous amount of luck. Like just by the circumstances of my birth and my marriage and my partner's job prospects, just meant that I had about a year and a half of my life where I legally couldn't work because we were ricocheting all over the world, and so thankfully I didn't need to because we had enough money coming in from my partner's job. But that, like, I was able to devote a lot of time to this. I do this full time now. We have 2 full-time employees in the business, but that's not from like, there are countless games designers out there who work harder than I do, and it's because it's that luck. It's Marisha Ray picking up your product and saying, hey, this is Honey Heist. It's finding the right artist to draw your game, and then you gel and people find it, and people are like, oh yeah, I understand, I want this now, like we did with Adrian Stone on Spire, who did some incredible work. And I think that the advice I give to we'll get to Patreon in a sec, but the advice I give to anyone who's trying to make it in any business is that not that you make your own luck, but you make your own opportunities. And you can work as hard as you like. You can write the best game in the world. You can write the worst game in the world. It honestly doesn't matter. There's a lot of shitty games out there. Can I swear on this podcast?
Fuck yeah.
Great. There's a lot of fucking shitty ass games out there, which aren't any good, but they've been marketed properly, or which people recognize. Like people recognizing something is a huge amount of why they'll give you money for it because it's familiar. But if you're looking for opportunities, if you're looking to try and make it in the scene, you're trying to break through, the advice I used to give was shake as many hands as possible. And whether that will be online now because it's legally inadvisable to shake hands in the current pox climate. But meeting people and trying to, well, not meeting people actually either.
Networking? Shall we call it networking?
That's the thing, yeah. And like networking is a weird thing to do. And I think that if you go to it with the understanding that you are networking, then it's a skill you have to learn. It's very difficult, and very few people can do it properly. And like people can tell when they're being networked at, and it doesn't feel very nice. And like you don't feel very good doing it either. And I think that what you need to do is position yourself in a place where you can say, here's what I have to offer to this relationship. Like you're trying to make friends. You're not trying to exploit people for business. You're not trying to get something out of it. You are trying to, maybe once you meet someone, once you make that connection, something will happen out of that. You don't know what it'll be. It could be someone you meet at a party, and then 5 years down the line, they're like, oh hey, we know you, blah, blah, blah. But if people know you exist, that's a huge bonus to you, because then you go from being some guy has a game I don't care about to Grant has a game. I know Grant. I've seen him on this. We hung out at that. I really like that. Oh, actually, I've got this work coming up. I wonder if Grant would be interested in that. And it's about trying to be genuinely interested in what people are talking about and what people are passionate about, and share those interests with each other. Will get you a long way. But yeah, man, like also do your best to be born as a middle-class English-speaking white male. That's my best advice if you can do that.
Well, there is a lot of privilege that comes packaged with that. But
As far as Patreon goes, by the way, absolute crapshoot. I don't know. I like Kickstarter. We've worked out. Like, we understand what you need to do for Kickstarter, in as much as you need to, like, we try and be as transparent as possible. We try and deliver on time. We try and give regular updates. And Kickstarter is fairly reliable in as much as, right, it's going to promote it to the right people who give you the money. We can math out, and thankfully my partner Mary has a brain the size of a planet and is able to do all the sums on this stuff. As far as Patreon goes, I don't really know. It's really difficult because it's set up on a model of you're giving away something for free as a core product, and then your patrons get something else. And it can be really disheartening if you're having to produce exclusive content for maybe 3 people who are giving you $2 for it.
Yeah, it almost seems like Patreon is good for leveraging the audience once you build the audience, but you're not going to do that on Patreon necessarily.
Not especially, no. And like part of the reason why my RPG games sold at all in the first place is because I used to be a games journalist. I used to work for a magazine called FHM in the UK. Before that, yeah, that FHM.
I didn't realize they had games in there. Okay, cool.
English. Oh well, I mean they did after I showed up.
Okay.
I was very much in the sunset era of FHM, and so they couldn't just talk about tits as much as they wanted to. So they brought me on to talk about games, and occasionally tits in games.
I remember talking to, when I do some RPG publishing myself occasionally, and one of the guys who gave me a break a few years ago, things started to bottom out about 2008. He was like, it's amazing to me. People are trying to make money selling games when magazines, well, like yours, but he was thinking specifically of like Playboy and a couple others having trouble selling pictures of naked people.
Yeah.
And it's just it's more challenging than you might think it might. You might think it would be to
You can charge a lot more for a game than you can for a picture of a naked person. Paradoxically, and it's all about positioning yourself as a luxury item. And if you're the sort of person who buys a luxury item of nudes, that says something very much about you. That says like, oh, I've got certain art on my walls, and I have a drawer you mustn't go into. That sort of thing, Oh, I'm going to wear a silk. I'm going to wear a silk bathrobe which comes just mid thigh and drink mimosas on my veranda. And that's a smaller market than say nerds with too much money.
Yeah, there's only so many guys who have a closet full of Caminos.
Yeah, precisely.
But I think that's kind of. I mean, I don't want to say Monty Cook is a genius, but positioning his games the way he has, as this is a luxury good, and you want this, and you'll pay $500 for the box set.
Invisible Sun is. I have a complex relationship with Invisible Sun. In that, I've not really. I haven't read it. I don't think you can.
Yeah.
It's very. We got a copy as a business to have a look through. And Chris has yet to open all of the cards. We got it about 6 months ago.
Does it just sit on your shelf and whisper horrible nothings to you in the middle of the night?
It must do. Yeah. Well, it's up in Sheffield at the moment, thankfully. So I don't have to have it. I have to weather its presence. But it's quite clever what Monty's done in that respect. And like Invisible Sun would not work without Monty Cook having written RPGs for however many years he did beforehand. You can't you couldn't just rock up and be, hi, I'm some guy, $500 for a game, please. Look, it's nicely produced. You can do it with a board game, apparently. That's fine, but not a role-playing game.
Yeah, I don't understand the board game market, but you are correct. It's a different beast entirely. But I mean, it's like you say, it's a luxury good. I mean, there's fans of certain bands, and I'll pick Kiss because I hate them. But they've been touring the country for years over here in America, and you can pay $200 to $500 to hang out with the lead singer and the guitar player, and they'll play a medley of their songs and shake your hand, tell you you're a great guy. And they haven't released a new album in since I was in high school.
That's what if you can get it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, hey, I just want, before we wrap up, I've been a big fan of this one game you have. I'm writing a hack of it right now, Havoc Brigade, and
yes.
Kind of your Goblins philosophy you're talking about earlier. You have various orcs you can play who are kind of on like a, I guess we could call it, it's somewhere in the Ocean's 11 / Dirty Dozen kind of.
Yeah, listen to Dirty Dozen than Ocean's 11, yeah.
Yeah, but then you've also got a random number of goblins who are basically expendable. So like Goblin Quest.
It's one goblin per hit point.
Yep. So no, it's just even a fun game to read. I can't wait to play it someday. It looks
Thank you. It's like Havoc Brigade. So when I was talking earlier about like giving out a free product as opposed to a Kickstarter, Havoc Brigade was what I was referencing because I did the Kickstarter for Goblin Quest. I think it was just after I released Havoc Brigade, and Havoc Brigade sunk completely. Like no one's heard of it, and I'm really proud. Like I got art done of all the characters, and we've got a cover, which is quite a lot for indie RPGs at the grade I was working at then. And the rule system is fun, and it's this sort of we've got a map made, and it's this really scrappy madcap, everyone running around. Okay, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this. And you play orcs, and it's with the bears, it's with the toddlers setting things on fire. It's if you're playing goats or if you're playing kobolds or something. It's you're these agents of chaos in an ordered world. You get to mess it up, and it has mechanics for reward, both punishing you and rewarding you for making that noise. And I'm really proud of it, and no one knows it exists. I should really possibly re-release it at some point. I imagine with a proper lick of paint.
I would definitely be interested, but yeah, I found that on, as we mentioned earlier, Itch, and I don't know if a lot of my audience knows about Itch, but yeah, it's itch.io. Do a search for Grant Howitt, and it used to be a site just for video games, but there's been an indie RPG scene flowering there in recent years.
Yeah. Like so many interesting creators and creating like doing stuff which you will not find anywhere else. And like it's not because it's all good. I want to stress that there's like any place, there's a lot of crap all over. Like any open marketplace, you're going to have a lot of. Well, I mean, drive-throughs full of crap as well. You know, that's the nature of the beast. But there's lots of interesting things on there. And hit me up for recommendations if you'd like, listener, or just ask the gayest nerd you know, and they'll know. They'll probably be aware.
You're gonna get me in trouble talking like that, Grant. Okay. Well, hey, I need to wrap up and get back to my soulless corporate paymasters over here on this laptop. But Grant, it's been a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Been a pleasure, to talk to you. I hope you have a passable work day, and I wish the same to your listeners.
Oh, thank you, sir. So you're living? Are you still in Australia? Or are you over in England now?
Now we're in London now, via New York for 9 months, which is a part of my life I never wish to repeat, honestly. But no, we're in East London, and we, in terms of the coronavirus, we are only doing worse than you lot. Sorry, sorry, we are only doing better than you lot. That is like we can at least look at America and be like, well, it seems like they're fucking it up worse. But everyone else in the world is just handling it.
It's good to be number one in something, I suppose.
Yeah, number one in death. Woo!
It's sad times. And sad times call for good games. So you should go to RRD Games. Is it rrdgames.com or just rrd.com?
rrdgames.com. Go there. Don't think about the sad things I said. Go there and spend some money on games, and maybe you'll feel better.
Fair enough. And to all of our listeners and viewers, we'll see you next time on the BAMF podcast. And now there is this